I'm Nicole Johnston, and you're listening to 7am. It's been dubbed by underworld kingpins as disorganised crime. A new wave of young amateur gangsters are changing the scene with brazen daylight attacks, hit jobs on rivals' family members, and cases of alleged mistaken identity. Of course, it's all about money, notoriety, and settling scores. Today, Mark Morri, crime editor at the Daily Telegraph, on the evolving world of gangland violence, where contract killing can now be ordered off an encrypted app. It's Tuesday, April 21. Mark, gangland wars and underworld executions, they're not really anything new in this country, but we are seeing more innocent Australians getting caught up in all of it with these cases of mistaken identity. Could you take us through some of them?
Yeah, a couple of the worst that I've seen is one, there was a young hairdresser who was in the back of a car a couple of years ago with a female target, and her name was Amy Azuri, and these gunmen came in and just sprayed the back of the car and killed this young hairdresser.
The car sprayed with bullets in Sydney's southwest. Police say 48-year-old mother Lametta Fadlala was the target of this ambush on Saturday night. But also in the car was Amy Hazuri, an innocent hairdresser.
There was another one. A young guy was down at a boxing match a couple of years ago. He unfortunately looked like Ibi Hamzy. He's got to get into this Mercedes after the boxing event, and this car's just rocked up and pumped him full of bullets thinking it was Ibi Hamzy.
Detectives have revealed a father-to-be gunned down at Hurstville was murdered for no reason in a case of mistaken identity.
I mean, of course, we've got the most horrible one is the alleged kidnapping of that elderly man. He was grabbed by a couple of men who burst into his home and was going to be held for ransom. They were asking for enormous amounts of money. He was tortured and he was found dead, a few days later.
Police attached to the strike force executed 3 search warrants and made 2 arrests in connection with the murder and kidnapping of Mr. Baghdarian.
Again, it was the wrong person, and they sent a message to the actual target saying, "We got your dad," and he's gone, "Suck shit, you got the wrong person."
Once again, I wish to stress that Mr. Baghdarian was not the intended target of the kidnapping.
Police put in so many resources, but again, they got the wrong person. Now, this is happening all the time. They're shooting the wrong houses. That's almost frequent. I remember there was a drive-by about 3-4 months ago. There were 2 drive-bys within about 30 minutes. And I rang up one of my police contacts and I said, were they after 2 of the same crew? And he went, no, the first house was a mistake. So they just went and shot the next place. So that's the sort of the people that we're dealing with now, that, incompetent crooks. Competent ones are scary enough, but incompetent ones that are going about and doing this for small amounts of money, more for notoriety, and it's really making the streets a little bit more dangerous than they ever have in other gangland wars that I've covered.
So these cases of mistaken identity, is it really unusual, or is this a recent shift? And why is it happening?
It is more unusual than it ever has been. I mean, there have been cases before, but not the amount that we've had. It's because they're literally outsourcing. They're just going into encrypted chat rooms that crooks are known to use and saying, hey, does anyone want to do this for $20,000? I remember there was a shopping list that I saw that the police had intercepted, and it was, firebombing car 6,000, drive-by 7,000, kidnap, torture 6,000 a day, all sorts of things like that. But they're being picked up by young men, obviously disenfranchised from their families, a lot of them, and they're doing it for notoriety, for this gang thing. So they have really no idea what they're doing. Some of them never held a gun. And the other really big problem the police are finding is, in times gone by, they always know the players. They would know who was a guy that was, always stealing cars, or the gun dealers and all that sort of thing. But at the moment, there's so many different little groups out there. The other thing is they are unknown to police, or they're so young they don't even have records. Some are like 15. driving getaway cars from shootings. That is unheard of. And when you have that sort of immaturity, that's when you're going to have all these mistakes. And that's why it's becoming so much more dangerous than it has been in times gone past.
And Mark, we have this phrase, airtasker for criminals. It's now being used to describe how these hits are being ordered. Can you talk us through how it happens?
Well, it's not actually airtasker, but it works along that sort of principle. They are just putting out contracted jobs in chat rooms, normally encrypted in WhatsApp. Threema is another one where they're going, hey, bro, normally, anyone want to take on a job to do this, 20,000 or whatever. And then there are people just taking up these contracts to go and do these shootings. You know, the guys at the top are the ones not getting caught. It's the gronks, as they call them, or the muscle. Again, because of the encryptions and the new world, it makes it very hard for them to prove who ordered it. And most of the time, the guys carrying out the shootings, they don't even know who's paying them, who they're doing the job for.
Western Sydney has been rocked by 3 shootings overnight.
It's lucky no one was killed as Sydney's underworld violence exploded this morning, with a new gang war quickly spiralling out of control.
It's a bit under siege in southwest Sydney, but I actually think we've got so desensitised to it that it's not quite getting the headlines it should. I'm not saying it's the worst, because I saw in 2013 there was the Brothers for Life were at war between each other. The Hells Angels and the Comancheros were in one of their normal flare-ups. And there were probably public place shootings every night. But nothing like this. They were always getting the right targets. They weren't getting the wrong people. And the kidnapping, the ferocity of what's happening with the kidnappings now is another thing I've never, ever seen. People having their teeth ripped out, their fingers cut off. That never happened before. And that's now what's happening.
Coming up, what happened to the Gangster Code of Honour? Mark, the police say that there used to be honour amongst gangsters and a code where families were off limits. That is clearly no longer the case.
A man has been charged with the murder of a Sydney woman who was kidnapped from her home and shot dead in a car in April.
Police are currently theorising there could potentially be a link between Miss Tran's husband and a Victorian drug syndicate, a Vietnamese...
Are families fair game now?
It appears that they are. People said, they would never kill women. Well, that's a bit of a myth. We look at Sally Ann Huckstep, who was a woman who spoke out against police corruption, and she was murdered. That was back in the 80s. A lot of women were actually, and prostitutes particularly, or heroin users, were deliberately overdosed so that they looked like accidents. But you're right, the families, children and parents weren't ever really targeted. If you got in a pub fight and hit an underworld's family member, that could start a war. So that's another phenomenon now that the police haven't really seen.
So we can see these crimes, they're becoming more brazen. And what about the criminals? Are they bolder as well? What is it you've seen?
So what's happening, one, there is so much money being made from drugs now. It is incredible. So they have so much more money. And the top echelon are still kind of protected. They're doing it all now via encrypted devices. Many of them are overseas because, the heat's got too much for them here because the cops are all over them. Or they actually now feel that it's a lot more dangerous to be a crook here because there are people willing to shoot anywhere at any time. So even if you took enormous precautions, you're still likely to be killed. There was one alleged plot, to kill a Comanchero bikie on Christmas Day as he was reporting to police at Darling Harbour, right, in the middle of the day. So, yeah, they are getting more reckless. But the other thing is that because we've got all these young crooks who are just doing it for nothing, basically, that's where the mistakes come, and that's where they just don't care. 10 years ago, to knock off a well-known crime identity, that would cost you anywhere from $750,000 upwards. Right? There were guys doing contracts for $1 million. Now, people are being shot for a lot less than that. And they're now waging a propaganda war using social media. They're filming these acts of violence.
The teens filmed their illegal activities. Some are armed.
Today we're going to be with a speed camera, all right? All right, we're in a stolen car.
The videos are then shared on a new Instagram page, taunting Hornsby police.
Some of them are terrifying. When standing outside a house, there was a guy with an AK-47, two of them, and it looked like a Tarantino movie. And then they video it, and then they post it online, or they use media outlets. So they're doing it to glorify themselves, to intimidate, to threaten. But they're also a bit stupid, because half the time there's vital clues in every one of those videos. The gangsters used to just vanish back in the 80s and no one never found, except for maybe their bones 15 years later out at Foreshore Drive. Whereas now they're trying to video it, they make it very public. They're getting shot in gyms, shopping centres. And, again, it's because of the immaturity that's happening. They're so young.
So, Mark, when you put all of this together, the money, the social media, younger, more amateur criminals, how would you describe how the underworld has changed? Because you've been covering this for a very long time. So how do the players and the dynamics between all these different gangs, how do they compare to when you first started?
A phrase that actually I heard one person, John Ibrahim, said, he said it's not organised crime. Now, it's very disorganised crime. It's so fractured, and that also makes it very hard for the cops, because there are so many different groups out there. And in the old days, I hate saying old days, but the cops knew who they were dealing with. There was normally a structure. The really professional crooks would like to keep low profile, try to keep public shootings down to a minimum, but these guys don't care. Again, it's the recklessness. And the other thing is there's just this unending supply. That seems to be the problem. The fact that we haven't had more innocent people shot is a credit. The police are stopping. I don't know how many murders I know that they've stopped, probably a dozen that I know of in the last year. They intercepted just recently on a Saturday, they stopped an alleged attack that was going to be carried out on a Saturday afternoon. And that was going to be carried out near a leagues club or near a suburban football field. So they're kind of holding the tide. The minute they lock up a whole lot of others, there's just more coming through. They've mainly driven the Alameddines offshore, the Houch crime family, which was very, very strong. They've been weakened. They've been, because the cops have locked them up. And sometimes they say they're a victim of their own success, because the minute they stop some of these major crews or really hurt them and weaken them, there's all these opportunistic others who then say, great, we're going to try and take over that area. And that leads to conflict again. It was happening in the 80s as well, we just didn't have the proliferation, we didn't have the population, and we never saw it played out so vividly, because we're now seeing cars on fire on social media, so it looks spectacular, and there's so much there for people to see. So it's never going to stop.
Mark, it's been truly fascinating. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks very much.
Also in the news, has one nation reached its peak in the polls? That's the question being asked after a new poll showing support for the party has dropped to its lowest level in 3 months. One Nation dropped 2 points with voters. Support for Pauline Hanson has also fallen. Her likeability is down 4 points. One Nation MP Barnaby Joyce has put the slump down to the scandal surrounding the party's employment of a convicted rapist.
I look at the polls, and I suppose that there's a little bit of bad press, especially around one of our former staffers, and I understand that. And, the polls, people say I don't watch the polls. Of course people watch the polls. The polling's still higher than the coalition, by the way, but it's a lot of work. You've got to remember.
And US Vice President J.D. Vance is among an American delegation hoping to enter a second round of negotiations with Iran in Pakistan today. But Iran's state media says its participation hasn't been confirmed. Donald Trump has threatened strikes on Iranian power plants and bridges if a deal isn't reached this week. It comes after the US seized control of an Iranian container ship Trump says was trying to evade the American naval blockade. I'm Nicole Johnston. This is 7am. Thanks for listening.